You're tuning into the Business English Career Playbook, the podcast designed to give you the winning edge in your career through better business English. We're going to explore some fascinating topics today that will help you sound more professional and fluent. If you're serious about leveling up your English, make sure you subscribe right now. You won't regret it.
Remote work was supposed to be our salvation from the daily grind. But new data shows 67% of remote workers feel more burned out than when they were in the office. Today, we're exploring how this massive workplace experiment is actually reshaping our entire relationship with work.
That burnout statistic is pretty shocking. What's driving those numbers up when remote work was meant to reduce stress?
Well, it's fascinating actually. Studies show people are working an average of 2.5 hours longer per day at home compared to the office. The physical boundary between work and home disappeared, and with it went our ability to truly disconnect.
That makes me think about all those quick checks of email we do at 9 p.m. now.
Exactly right. And here's what's really interesting. Companies that rushed to remote work during the pandemic saw a 47% increase in productivity initially, but by month 6, those numbers started dropping as burnout crept in.
So what are the most innovative companies doing to combat this?
You know, I've been tracking this closely, and some organizations are taking radical steps. Companies like Gitlab, which has been fully remote since day one, mandate that employees take regular vacation time and have implemented what they call family and friends days, where the entire company shuts down.
That's such a different approach from the traditional, always-on culture we've developed.
And here's something that might surprise you. Companies with these strict boundaries are actually seeing higher productivity. Microsoft Japan tested a 4-day workweek and saw productivity jump by 40% while electricity costs fell by 23%.
Oh wow, so shorter hours might actually be better for both the bottom line and employee well-being?
That's exactly what the data suggests. But there's another fascinating trend emerging, what researchers are calling asynchronous first workplaces. These companies are completely reimagining how teams collaborate.
Tell me more about that. How does asynchronous first actually work in practice?
Well, imagine a workplace where real-time meetings are the exception, not the rule. Companies like Doist have employees across 30 different countries, and they've found that detailed written communication and recorded video updates work better than trying to get everyone on a Zoom call.
Though I imagine that requires a pretty significant shift in how people think about collaboration.
You're absolutely right. And that's where the technology piece becomes crucial. We're seeing an explosion in tools designed specifically for asynchronous work. The market for these collaboration platforms grew by 300% in the last year alone.
Speaking of technology, I've noticed some interesting patterns in how different generations adapt to these tools.
Oh man, the generational divide is fascinating. Gen Z workers, who grew up digital native, are actually reporting higher levels of isolation in remote work compared to their older colleagues. They're missing out on the informal mentorship that naturally happens in an office.
That's really counterintuitive. You'd think the TikTok generation would thrive in a digital workplace.
Right? But it makes sense when you dig deeper. Early career development often depends on observing how more experienced colleagues handle situations. That's harder to replicate virtually.
So how are companies addressing this mentorship gap?
Some are getting really creative. IBM launched what they call digital shadowing, where junior employees can access recordings of senior staff meetings and decision-making processes. They're essentially creating a library of institutional knowledge.
That's pretty brilliant, turning a challenge into an opportunity for better documentation and learning.
And it ties into another major trend we're seeing, the rise of what's being called workplace analytics. Companies are using AI to analyze communication patterns and workflow data to understand how remote work is actually happening.
Though that raises some pretty serious privacy concerns, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And that's becoming a major point of tension. A recent survey showed 65% of remote workers feel some form of surveillance anxiety. But here's the twist. Companies that are transparent about their monitoring actually see higher engagement scores.
Interesting how transparency can make such a difference.
And speaking of transparency, let's talk about salary transparency in remote work. Companies are grappling with whether to pay based on employee location or role value, regardless of where someone lives.
That must be creating some interesting dynamics in the job market.
Oh, you have no idea. We're seeing what economists are calling geo-arbitrage, where highly paid workers are relocating to lower-cost areas while keeping their big city salaries. It's actually starting to reshape local economies.
That's fascinating. So, remote work isn't just changing how we work, it's changing where we live too.
Exactly. And that brings us to perhaps the biggest question. What does all this mean for the future? The data suggests we're not going back to the old way of working, but we're also not staying fully remote.
So, what's the sweet spot?
Well, according to recent research, the most successful companies are adopting what's called intentional hybrid, where teams come together for specific purposes like creative collaboration or relationship building, but handle focused work remotely. It's not about where you work, but about why you're choosing to work in a particular way.
That actually makes a lot of sense, using each environment for what it does best.
And that might be the key lesson from this whole experiment. The future of work isn't about remote versus office. It's about intentionality and purpose in how we work, wherever we happen to be.
Well, that's all the time we have for today on the Business English Career Playbook. It's been a pleasure exploring this topic with you. Remember, consistency is key. So make sure you subscribe to get our new episodes delivered straight to you. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll talk to you in the next one.